Hello, everybody. Hello, musings and music fans, Vosaworld radio fans. This is EGBE MBIWAN MONJIMBO coming to you with a special Christmas edition of the show. As you all know, the show usually airs on Saturdays, and this particular Saturday is going to be Christmas Day. Not being too sure how many people may be able to tune in to listen to anything on Christmas Day itself. I've chosen to pre-record this so that on Saturday itself, the plan is to just broadcast traditional Christian carols on the radio. And so my plan is to air this on Friday, Christmas Eve, especially since the topic I want to deal with is to do with Christmas, the Christmas story itself, not the commercialization of it or the hype around it, the hustle and bustle, which kind of takes us away, tends to have us drifting from the real story. As they say, Jesus is the reason for the season. And all the hustle and bustle and all the busybody and wahala that comes around, the tendency is to forget what we are really supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be celebrating somebody's birthday, but then we are lucky if he even crosses our mind. We are thinking about what we have to cook for that day, the gifts we're supposed to give to our loved ones on that day. If we're organizing a party, if we are going to an event somewhere, it's about plan. And sometimes the real story is forgotten. So I decided to talk about the real Christmas story and what a story it is. I mean, there are so many themes you can take from it: humility, obedience, trust, conviction, faith, joy, and hope. Those are going to be the main topics I'm going to touch on, and then bring the story to life so that if throughout the season, you, like me and many others, have not taken the time to pause and really meditate and really think about the real reason for the season, we have an opportunity to do so. So I think I will go ahead and start with just humility and the person that exemplifies that the most is naturally the hero of the story, the person whose birthday we celebrate, and that would be Jesus. If you think about it, it is, an incredible story that somebody who created the world, somebody who resided, has always existed, has always been, would choose to humble himself, to come and to accept to come and be confined in the womb of a teenage girl, sit there 9 months, and then be born in such a lowly place, not a palace, not even a decent home, in a cave, in a stable, and have for his first place of residence a feeding trough, a place where animals would eat from, is where he was laid. I cannot imagine even myself now wanting to be confined, that we could talk much less of, but I'm a nobody. I'm not anybody who with any pedigree or anything. But to think that somebody would leave the splendor, the magnificence, the I don't know what to describe it since we haven't been there, of heaven, and come on down, humble himself, and come on down and come and live amongst the people he created, amongst the animals he created. You know how those manger scenes that they show look so clean, neatly swept. The cows look so decent. The sheep that are bleating there look so good. But we all know, I am somebody whose grandmother raised pigs. Those places stink. The animals would be there and they don't smell good to start with. Then all the little droppings that would be there and everything, that was so not the place to be. But and he knew it, because it's something else if you find yourself in those circumstances and you're going, wow, I did not anticipate this, and then it just happens to you. But he knew that he was leaving heaven and coming to come and go through this, and he still went through with it. That is humility, that is obedience to his father, and that is love. love, love, love. Because not only did he come here to just be born for being born sick, he came to die. We cannot talk about the cradle without talking about the cross that came, that he came knowing that is where he was going. He was born to die. Yes, we all know that when we are born, we eventually die, but that is not our purpose in life. We come and fulfill a purpose and then we die. He came and his mission was to come and die to save the world from its sin. So he deserves to be given some time, some thought during the season that bears his name. Christmas, there's Christ, and then Mass. So and talking about obedience, of course, we would go and talk about another character, Joseph, who I don't know that they make men like him, that men like him exist, who would have that kind of story happen to him. It's a good thing, at least, that the angel warned him about, well, not warned him, explained to him what was going on with this precious woman he was going to marry, who turned up pregnant, and is going to be telling a story about how the pregnancy is conceived by the Holy Spirit. The average man will go, yeah, right. So, and I'm not sure, the angel told him, but the angel didn't tell his sisters, his siblings, or his mother or dad. And I can imagine that even though he made up his mind based on what the angel told him, and because he was a good man to keep that engagement to Mary, I can imagine what his family and friends had to say. I'm sure they called him all names, all kinds of names, from Mumu to Butuku to anything, but he stayed the course, and we know that he was an excellent father, earthly father to Jesus. Then there's trust, the kind of faith and trust that Mary had. You come and tell her this thing, poor little innocent girl, and instead of, the only question she asked is, how is this going to happen? She did not rebel. And once she was told, given that answer that she was given, not only did she just say, well, how go do, let me just manage this thing. She actually praised and glorified God. She actually sang the song we call the Magnificat in praise of God, and said she was honored. It's easier for us to see now, to sit now, look in hindsight and say, oh yes, she was honored. It was an honor. But we are already understanding that honor now in hindsight. She being right there in the moment in that situation, with all the talk that must have been surrounding her, with all the difficulty, getting on this donkey and having to do that ride to Bethlehem, and go through all that pain and suffering, eventually even seeing her son crucified. It's one thing to see it and say so. It's another thing for her who had to live it, who had to have that responsibility of raising the Son of God. He was her child as well as her own Lord and Savior too. Not an easy task at all. Then talk about conviction and conviction. When you believe in something, you follow through with it. I think about the wise men. We don't necessarily know that there were just three of them. Tradition says there were three, I think, based on the three gifts. There was frankincense, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So we'll assume that there were three of them, but there may have been more than just those three that we think about. But these are people who saw a star and decided to travel miles and miles and miles, not flying in an airplane, not even going on some kind of ship, crossing desert lands, because people believe that they came from Persia or from Mesopotamia, some such place in the east. And they traveled and traveled for what must have taken them weeks, if not months, to get to this. It's not like now where they could see, they saw it on CNN or somebody sent them a picture on WhatsApp. No, this is something that they just saw. They said they saw a star. And on the basis of that, seeing that star, we're convinced enough to travel. After 1 week, you may be like, okay, I've had enough of it. Let us turn and go back. But they kept on coming till they got to Jerusalem, where they assumed the child would be, because since they were coming to worship a king, and got to that, to Herod, and we know how that story went. But that's also talking about people who perseverance. When you're convinced about something and you believe in something, so we can learn from them about how you have an idea, you have a thought that is in your mind, and you go through with it to the very end. And but those are the oh, let's not forget about joy and hope that we see in the shepherds. I was almost going to skip them, and that would have been a big old mistake. They are such an important character in that, an important part of the Christmas story, because as everybody knows, they were less than the totally the dregs of society. Nobody paid them any mind. They were there having to take care of sheep, definitely not smelling good. And what we are told is that they were so not considered important in society that nobody would even take their word in a court of law. You could not testify as a shepherd. Your word didn't count for anything. And yet it is to them that the angel chose to go and break the news. The gospel was first preached to them. They were also the first people to carry the gospel to the world, because the story was told to them while they were out there in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night, as Luke's gospel says. And then the angel appeared there, and with him a multitude of the heavenly hosts praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men." We all know that from our Sunday school days. I can recite the whole of that. Luke 2, the birth of Jesus. We know how it went. They were in the same country, shepherds abiding in the fields, keeping watch over their flocks by night. You see, and those are the things you learn them and you say them and you just recite them and you don't think about them. And then now, as time passes, you learn to go and read that gospel again, word for word, and try to soak it in and really see what it is. Imagine them there out in those hills of Judea, just watching their sheep, and then imagine that kind of light that came out, which must have been terrifying, because what did the angel say to them? "Fear not," is what he first said, because he knew they would be afraid. "For I bring you good tidings of great joy." And that word joy, joy, joy is the recurring theme throughout the Christmas story. If you listen to all the traditional Christmas songs, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come." It's about rejoicing and about joy. That's why it's a joyous season, even though in our day and time now we tend to take it and be joyful over the new clothing, over the gifts we get. But we know that the real joy was the joy of salvation, the message that came, that a redeemer was born, because we were headed for a condemnation had he not come and laid his life down for us to have the opportunity to live, to have life after death. That's really the message. And what struck me as I read the story this time around is the fact that those, first of all, they obeyed. So they're part of the obedient group. Those shepherds, they obeyed when they said, let us go see what has been made known to us, because they described to them that they would go find this baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. So they went over and they saw, they saw, and then they went and they said they proclaimed what they had seen and heard to everybody. So with all that joy. But what struck me this time when I read that story over is the fact that they were joyful and happy, even though their circumstances had not yet changed or had not changed. So they were still poor shepherds. They were not going to be any richer. The angels didn't give them any money. In fact, I was thinking about it and wondering whether they even still kept their jobs after this, because I don't think they took the sheep with them. They were watching those sheep and they said, "Let us go at once into Bethlehem and see what has been made known to us." So my guess is they left the sheep out there in the hills and went over to see this thing. And heaven alone knows what happened to them when the owners of the sheep themselves, even if they had owned the sheep themselves, it means the sheep would not just stand there and wait for them. They may be lost. Or if they were hired by somebody, like as may likely be the case, then what do you tell that poor owner of the sheep what has happened to the sheep meanwhile? So maybe their actual physical or material status may have instead changed for the worse, but it did not dampen their joy. And that for me was a lesson about how sometimes when they say the joy of the Lord is your strength, they tell you that usually when you are going through difficulty. So the meaning to me is not necessarily that your circumstances must be good for you to have joy, or that you should go around the place laughing through your challenges or your issues that you may be facing. The idea is that you think about the deeper meaning of what you know is yours, what you believe in, and that keeps you going. On the strength of that belief, on the strength of that faith, you can afford to be joyful. That's the way that's what struck me. And that is what's going to be, will have to be a lesson for so many, many people who, during this joyful and festive season, are not one bit happy. That is, the circumstances that they find themselves in are really difficult. We all know how this year has been. All the deaths from COVID-19, all the illnesses, cancer has I run that a Sika Pride blog, so I cannot tell you how many times I've had to just put out an obituary, and each story more tragic and more sorrowful than the other, than the next. People losing their only child at age 17, ready to go to college. You'd be heartbroken. This is going to be the first Christmas you're experiencing without that child. Other people losing both parents within weeks of each other. Others losing them within days of each other. Others having to bury a mother and a sister on the same day. It has been terrible. We've had a very difficult year. Many who still have those loved ones in the morgue, in the mortuary as we speak. They're waiting for the Christmas season to be over, and then they'll do the burials. So all this talk about joy, 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 it's going over their heads. Some of us don't even have the nerve to tell them and say, try and be joyful. It's like like a slap in the face. But you think about all of these characters that one has mentioned here, from those shepherds to Mary herself, to Joseph, everybody. It's not, their life wasn't, their circumstances were not funny, were not easy. Having to do a trek on a donkey heading to your place of birth from Nazareth to Bethlehem, not because you are going there out of your own will, but because some governor, some Roman somebody has said, go over and get yourself go have yourself counted in your place of birth for taxes, for more taxes to be paid. In fact, you think about it, this whole circumstance into which even Jesus was born, the Jews were under Roman occupation, Roman rule. So things were not easy for them either. But yet the story was still that joy to the world. And that joy is based on the hope you have of things to come. That things will get better. That there is somebody has come, and if not, because if he did not come to die and redeem us and save us, he came as a savior, as a redeemer, and an intercessor for us, we would have it far worse. That's even why those of us who've lost loved ones, if we believe what we believe, at least you have the hope that you're going to see them again, and that this is not just it, and a tragic and sad. So all of this said, we may want to also, this time, I don't want to only dwell on the natural characters that are always talked about in the Christmas story. In fact, John the Baptist too, who, another lesson in humility, you would come and your job is to elevate somebody else. Not that you happen to do it as a matter of fact, was one of the things you do throughout the course of your life. No, his actual purpose of being born was to herald somebody else. Look at our society now. To get somebody to say one good thing about somebody, even when justified, is hard. How much more to sit and your sole purpose is to keep on saying, I must decrease so that he must increase, like he said. And now I am not even worthy to tie his shoelaces. And always kept on pointing to Jesus. What a lesson for us to who have such a hard time elevating others, saying even a good thing about others. Not only do we have a hard time saying good things about others, we instead tend to do what we can, whatever we can, to detract. When you don't say the good thing about somebody, your own self to start with, but when somebody else now says a good thing, you are the first to say, whatever about it. So that's another lesson we could learn about being ready to acknowledge the good we see in others and praise them and give them credit for it. But then I thought this time we should also look and learn from some people who totally missed the whole Christmas story, and make sure that we don't do the same. Let's start with the innkeeper. I'm sure in hindsight, he said to himself, oh my goodness, when he sits and looks at this story and he sees that his own part in the Christmas story is to say, there is no room in the inn. How sad he must be now in hindsight, that the savior of the world, the person who has divided history into BC and AD, came to your doorstep looking for a place to be born. His parents came to your doorstep looking for a place to be born, and you said, there's no room in the inn. Had he known, as we always say, had I known, hindsight is 2020, he would have even gotten out of his own bed and said, here you go. You're welcome to occupy my entire house. But that is how he, and I don't think he was necessarily a mean person. We don't know about him. They don't tell us about him. It's just we just know about the innkeeper. And we know that they must have been denied a place because that's how they ended up in the stable. But before we point fingers at that innkeeper, think about how we ourselves would have responded. Remember, this was the time when they were having the census. So people are coming back to their place of origin to be accounted for this tax, this thing. So it must have been a very busy season. And then he's an innkeeper. So he must have been very busy thinking about making money. The way somebody who sells toys, this is his season now to make money. A person who's a caterer, this is their season now to make money catering events and weddings and all the weddings and things that are happening now. So the danger is that in all of that hustle and bustle and trying to make your money, you can actually forget what is essential, what is important. The whole Mary and Martha thing, remember? Mary and Martha, the sisters, the siblings of Lazarus. Martha was the kind of busybody person, cooking in the kitchen, trying to get ready to wait on Jesus. Was what she was doing bad in itself? Definitely not. Jesus needed to eat. His disciples who came with him needed to be catered to and looked after. So yes, meals needed to be cooked, the house needed to be kept clean and everything. But in the scale of priorities, what's more important? Jesus said clearly, it's not as if we are the ones making that decision. Jesus himself said clearly, Mary made the better choice to come and sit at his feet and listen to what he had to say. And that's what's going on now with the poor innkeeper. First of all, there's a kind of thing they say familiarity. It's like, it's not a big deal, it's not a new thing. If they had come with halos on their heads, he may have said, oh my goodness, these are some important people. But they just came there all raggedy from their journey on a donkey. And so he didn't just pay them any mind, didn't think they were anybody of any importance, which is how we tend to judge people too. You look at them, they don't look like they're people of any importance. They don't pay them any attention. So sometimes it's that we look at people, we look at certain things, and because they don't look like they should carry any importance, we tend to disregard them. And then sometimes it's because we are so busy and absorbed in what we are doing as a career. Even now for us in preparations for this Christmas, we are not pausing long enough to think about what is really important, the story itself, and making sure that we too prepare room in our hearts for this Jesus. Because the innkeeper, his crime, quote unquote crime, was in not having actual physical room in his house, space in his house to keep Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus. But our problem would be not making room in our hearts and our minds to receive him, because that's what he came for, to actually receive him, not pausing long enough in the middle of all of our things that we're doing to pay attention to the real reason for the season. Imagine a person's birthday, it is his birthday, and you have not as much as mentioned his name. Even while you go to church, you go there as just a routine thing. You are more worried about what it is that you are going to wear to put to the service. While you are there thinking about your pot that you may have forgotten on the fire, about the guests that are supposed to be coming, and you're not even listening to the story. You just go through the motions. So that is maybe something, a warning we should take from somebody like the innkeeper. Then the other person, a group of persons who totally missed a Christmas, those scribes and I think Pharisees, no, high priests and scribes that Herod called. Remember, the story was later on when the wise men now came to Jerusalem and came and said, "Where is he that is born the King of the Jews?" They asked Herod that question. Herod didn't know, so he sent for this high priest and scribes and said, "This Messiah they're talking about, where is he supposed to be born?" And they read the scriptures to him and said, based on what we know from what the prophet Micah had said, and all the other prophets, he's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. So, and now, because of the way that all these nativity scenes that we have, that we buy in the shops and put in our homes, have the shepherds, have the sheep, have the three wise men all standing there, we tend to think that the wise men came at the same time as when Jesus was in the baby there, really like tiny infant in the stable. But we know from reading Matthew that that could not have been the case. They must have come when Jesus was already a toddler, at least 2 years old, because Matthew says the wise men came to visit Jesus and to worship him when he was living in a house. It says clearly house, not stable. On top of which, just jumping ahead, we know that Herod gave orders later on when he found out that the wise men had tricked him and we're not going to come back and tell him where the baby was. He ended up having the children in Bethlehem from 2 years, the male children in Bethlehem from 2 years down killed. So that is he himself figured out from what the wise men, from what the scribes would have said, that Jesus would have been at least 2 years old. Of course, we know the angel warned Joseph again in a dream, and he fled with Mary and Jesus to Egypt. But that's the whole thing. What is puzzling now about these chief priests and scribes is that they came and they read the scriptures from the scroll there, the scriptures to Herod and to the wise men to see where Jesus was going to be born, but they themselves made zero attempt to go and see what it is that was in their own prophecy that they were supposed to be the custodians of. Remember, the shepherds had gone when they saw that Jesus was born. It says they went and spread the news everywhere. The whole glory to God in the highest thing that the angels had told them. When they saw it for themselves, they went and spread the news everywhere. I know there was no WhatsApp and no TV and no TikTok at the time. And so news may not travel as fast, but it must have traveled in that day and time. That kind of wondrous thing. They must have heard the rumors over there in Jerusalem. And then now you yourself have read the scriptures to these people who are asking. And you see these dignified wise men have come with these gifts and are asking. I'm thinking, mere simple curiosity. Go and check it out for yourselves. But they didn't bother, just apathy. Couldn't be bothered, just sat down, being chief priest and high priest of what, I don't really quite know, when you're supposed to be about God. So they are also the ones that missed Christmas because of apathy, because of just carelessness, because of negligence. They didn't just bother themselves, which is what we too might be guilty of if we just, not that we actually hate the story or anything, we just like, I want to watch my TV, go to a concert here, do a thing here, and you not pay attention to what is important. So besides the innkeeper, you have these chief priests and scribes. Then of course you have Herod. I will give Herod some credit. At least he believed, he was pagan, believed the scriptures more than the chief priests and scribes themselves did, because at least he sent soldiers to Bethlehem to go kill the children. He had to believe that, yes, there may have been somebody born there, there would have been somebody born there who was born to be king of the Jews and felt threatened. So in a weird, cruel kind of way, at least he believed. If it's a matter of believing the scriptures, believing the prophecies, he believed them. He did a far better job than the priests and themselves. So, but coming to Herod himself, of course, it's always not even a matter of missing Christmas. He just, Christmas happened in spite of him, is what we should say. And that is terrible, but we have lessons to learn from his behavior. He clearly was the most narcissistic, self-absorbed. I don't know. He makes people like Idi Amin and Mobutu Sese Seko look like saints because that was Herod the Great, I believe. Herod the Great, the one who I think killed his mother-in-law, killed some of his sons, at least 2 of his sons. He felt threatened by them. And of course, that they may come and he felt power hungry enough, wanting to hold on to power so much, you kill all of these people, your own family, to stay in power. Look at even the case with Jesus. They're telling you somebody has just been born. Where is he that is born King of the Jews, which means he's a baby. You're already advanced in age. For you, you're a ruler already. How much of a threat can this baby be to you? But you see, that happens all the time. That happens a lot. People just they're overcome by jealousy, they're overcome by insecurity, they're overcome by envy, and they just see people as threats, even when they are not even an immediate threat to them. But the insecurity that they grow in, or their will, or their self-absorption, or their dire need to be the only person seen, heard, recognized, adored, makes them so bitter, so envious, so jittery that the minute they hear about anybody doing anything good, even if they are not an immediate threat to them, it's a matter of let's go get them, let's bring them down. Sometimes it means killing them, sometimes it means just saying a bad word about them, anything you can do to bring them down, as opposed to being confident in who you are and knowing that if you should be considered somebody on your own merit and not be worried about what somebody else is doing. And if they are doing well, so be it. You should be happy for them. It's all for the good of mankind. But of course, he was a ruthless ruler, insecure, and he definitely did what he could do to get rid of. Unfortunately, he was up against an almighty, omnipotent God. That was no match for him. So the way everything got arranged, so methodically, like only God would plan it. When those wise men went and asked, and they were told that it was Bethlehem, they followed the star and went to Bethlehem. And what happened? An angel appeared to them and told them to not go back to Herod, because Herod, of course, there you see pretense and hypocrisy and just lying. He said to them, go find out where he is and come back and tell me so I can go and worship him too, which we knew he had no intention of going to do any such thing. So be very careful what promises and things we hear from somebody who is in power somewhere, a politician. They can and do say things which they have absolutely no intention of doing, or they do and say things that are the total opposite of what they intend. So when you see people now and you're like, my goodness, oh wow, this person is just fibbing, this politician, this said this, not be today's start. It's been like that. Herod did the same. But thankfully, the angel warned the wise men in a dream that they had, and so they returned to their own country by a different way. For Herod to now sit and say, okay, let me just let it go, after he was only a baby. When he found out when he realized that they had tricked him and not come back to tell him anything, he got furious, and that is when he sent the soldiers to go over there and just kill babies, innocent blood, all the male children there in Bethlehem from 2 years and below, which is why that was in fulfillment of the prophecy by Jeremiah, I think, who said Rachel, that's the mother of the tribe of the people of Bethlehem, is weeping and mourning for her children and will not be comforted. So you can imagine all that bloodshed, all that slaying of innocent lives, just because somebody is after power and worried about keeping his position. So there we have Herod that didn't do the right thing, the innkeeper that didn't do the right thing, the priests and scribes that didn't do the right thing either. And as I keep saying before, we should not point fingers at them, because we can see all of those traits that they exhibited in us as well. And so this Christmas, let us make sure that we don't go that route, that we don't end up being apathetic, like the priests were, being self-absorbed, like the and narcissistic, like Herod was, or being too mindful of even good things, like the innkeeper. He was just so absorbed by his daily life, by making ends meet, by doing what he needed, his job, his profession, his means of living, to the point of not paying attention to something that was right under his nose, right there. So my plea, I'm sure I've been going for quite a while. My plea this Christmas season is that we all make a minute, find a minute. Maybe this was your minute or your set of minutes to take some time and pause and think about the real reason for the season. I make sure, this is my Christmas tree right here, that I have some ornaments that are also religious in nature. This one says Lord of Lords right there. This other one says Creator. The other one says Bread of Life. This one says Prince of Peace. This one says Redeemer over here. So that as I walk by, as I go around my business, I also see those things and they are reminders. Gone are the days, or gone should be the days when you think the time to meditate must be you. It's a good thing to still do that kind of meditation, quiet time. You go, you close the door of your room or closet and sit down there and just talk one-on-one with God. But Lord knows, in this busy day and they are busy in our busy lives, sometimes we just have to learn to keep on talking and communicating with Him, even as we go do our daily tasks. Nothing wrong. That's my kitchen right back there. Nothing wrong with, as we turn that fufu and sing a Christmas carol, have the herald angels sing and sing the ones. There's nothing wrong with jingle bells. There's nothing wrong with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. There's nothing wrong with old Saint Nick doing whatever he's doing there. It's fun. But we have those traditional Christmas songs that so tell the story. We need to go past the melody and pay attention to the words. Look at that "Oh Holy Night" song. The song "Oh Come All Ye Faithful," "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," "What Child Is This?" These are all songs that I have put together and plan on just having and playing them on Saturday morning itself for the usual musings and music. It will be not the musings on Saturday, or not just the musings, but also the music, and this time the carols that tell the story, the hymns that tell the story about how he left his throne and came down here to come and eventually die to save us. So I guess the lessons we learn from the characters, the good and the bad, and then also making sure that we make room in our hearts for him. I don't know how long I've been talking here and going. Luckily, my home has been pretty quiet. I won't be surprised if before long people start coming in from work or coming in, and I need to get going. But I wanted to do this, and I'm not going to stop before actually wishing you a merry, but also a thoughtful and blessed Christmas. My hope is that I'm going to get to do another show before 2022 comes in. But you never know. Life is what it is. I will go ahead and also wish you a happy new year 2022. In addition to a very, very Merry Christmas. I wish you peace. I wish you love and happiness. And for those who are hurting, especially those for whom this is going to be the first Christmas without somebody that you have spent all the other Christmases with, somebody that was so much in your life. Look at the people in Kentucky who I'm sure had already decorated their homes for Christmas, and then that tornado came through and just swept everything away, and you lose all your material belongings, including lives. Look at what Omicron is doing right now, wreaking havoc everywhere. It's not easy to keep hope and joy going in these kinds of circumstances. But then, as we are told, the joy of the Lord is our strength. May the hope that is embedded in Christmas help to lift your spirits, so you know it's not all just done and nothing to look forward to. May the hope that Christmas brings, may the joy that the Christmas baby brings, find a place in your heart to make you at least be able to crack a smile, to give you peace, to give you comfort. My thoughts and my prayers are definitely with you. So no matter what, have yourself a Merry Christmas and find it in your heart to be thankful to God for the gift of the baby Jesus. That's about it for whoever has been listening to this or watching it. Merry Christmas. God bless you. Bye.